So I'm joined today by Mr. Steve Hooper, who is a current professor at Embry-Riddle Aeronautica University, currently teaching at their School of Business Security and Intelligence. He's also a former special agent in charge at the Phoenix Field Office. He was working with the FBI for nearly 30 years, and he's here to talk to us today about the Nancy Guthrie case. Mr. Hooper, thank you so much for joining me.
Glad to do it.
So, let me put you in a hypothetical. You were special agent in charge at the Phoenix Field Office for the FBI, which is currently the same field office that is in charge of the Nancy Guthrie case. Now, in a world where you were still working for the FBI at this time and the Iran conflict was not taking place, can you walk us through some of the techniques or strategies you would be utilizing at this point in the investigation to try and track down Nancy Guthrie?
So what I would do, the way I used to operate was I would surge resources towards the priority matters. And certainly early on, when this first happened, resources were surged, and an incident command was set up, a joint operation was set up. Agents were sent from Phoenix down to Tucson. There's agents already in Tucson. There's a smaller office in Tucson that answers to Phoenix. They had all their resources on it. And then they sent more resources from Phoenix. Those resources are going to back off. So it's going to be, again, this ebb and flow. If the case is probably assigned to in the Bureau, what's called a violent crime squad or reactive squad, and they're doing the investigation and supporting Pima County's lead in the investigation. But if a lead comes in that looks promising and needs additional resources, the FBI field office will then surge resources, whether they need an evidence response team, a search team, a SWAT team. They will surge resources as needed. Those resources are always there with the FBI and available to any local police department for support.
In your experience, once someone has been missing for over a month, what is the likelihood that they are ever found?
Well, that's a tough question to answer. We've seen lots of cases where people are found 20, 30 years later, but some are found obviously sooner than that. I think that what you have to think about is how much attention it's going to continue to get. A lot of times the people that are missing, I mean, we got to say it like it is. Mrs. Guthrie is a little more well-known as far as the name because of who her daughter is. So it's going to continue to, with all the publicity that it's gotten, Pima County is still going to put the resources towards it. I believe the FBI still has a team, and they will continue to have a team investigating it and assisting Pima County as much as they can. So I think they're going to pay attention. I suspect they're still going through numerous leads that they haven't gotten to yet because of the wave of information that went out. First, it was $2,500 reward, and now it's all the way up to $1 million. And every time that type of reward is thrown out there, it's going to generate a lot more leads in the thousands. And so it's still taking them time to go through those leads. Some of them are resolved with a phone call, but some of them may lead to something. And I think that's what it's going to take, is going to be some lead that they're just now getting to that's going to pan out as a legitimate lead that leads to maybe a resolution in this case.
I'm glad you said that, because it actually brings me to my next question. You know, after a month in either a criminal case or a missing persons case, how does the investigation evolve in terms of priorities, strategies, maybe techniques that the FBI would use to gather intelligence?
Well, Jakson, you just said the magic word, priorities, right? At Pima County, they've got their priorities, but if you look at the FBI side, with what's going on with the conflict in Iran and what's going on recently in Michigan and different places, the FBI's Joint Terrorism Task Force, the FBI's resources are being tugged in a lot of different directions. So priorities do matter. And so that's what they'll do. They'll assess the threats through their Directorate of Intelligence side of the house, and they'll assign resources to the Guthrie investigation. But does it remain a priority in their world with what's going on globally and nationally? Pima County, on the other hand, although they do have to pay attention to potential threats to, say, the Jewish community in Pima County, any synagogues they have, and so forth, because of what's going on, they have to now weigh their priorities internally on how aggressive they are chasing down leads in the Guthrie case.
So it sounds to me like what you're saying is the Iran conflict is affecting the resources at the FBI Phoenix field office's disposal, and in turn is diminishing the chances that Nancy Guthrie or the people responsible for her disappearance are ever found. Would that be correct?
Right. I mean, the expectations by the citizens of the United States for what the FBI does is a national security agency. The Guthrie case is essentially a local case that the FBI has been supporting Pima County Sheriff's Department on. And so the priorities will be assessed in both agencies, and the amount of resources provided to continue to investigate this case will ebb and flow as the time goes on.
This is kind of a very broad question. I'm not expecting you to have an answer because anything could be the answer. Who do you think did this? I mean, in your 30 years of experience, you know, I don't know if you've ever dealt with a missing persons case like this, but in your experience, who is the most likely perpetrator?
Well, I can't give you a specific, but generally speaking, in these cases, especially after the initial response of she's been quote unquote kidnapped, people were waiting for a ransom. Well, that seems to have all fizzled, right? There's really nobody out there looking for a ransom. There's $1 million on the table, so they could get $1 million just by, you know, figuring out a way to turn her over. I'm going back to the old school that someone came to the house. This is just, you know, someone came to the house to break in. She either opened the door, they knew she lived there alone, they didn't expect her to open the door. Either that, or the door was open and they were in, because to date there's been no indication of a break-in, and she was asleep and woke up. Either way, the people who broke in were surprised by her and felt they couldn't leave her as a witness.
Two things. You're saying that, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it almost sounds like you're suggesting that multiple people were involved and were there at the house. And what you're also suggesting is that this was a break-in gone wrong, perhaps.
Again, I would argue that a majority of these cases, that's usually what happens. I'm just picturing a single person breaking in and having to deal with her and being able to pull this off by himself. He's got to get her out of the house. He's got to get her into a vehicle and so forth. Mm-hmm. So this is just from the outside looking in. There's a lot of ways to look at it, but someone was able to get her to leave that house. Either they carried her out and put her in a car, or she went with them by force, or she willingly went with them. So there's three options there, but somehow she's gone from that house, and the fact that it's been 40 days and no one's heard from her, and this probably is not a kidnapping, I would lean towards forcibly taken from the house.
Forcibly taken seems like the most likely scenario here, considering there were signs of a struggle inside the house, and also the blood right outside of her front door. How come, with all of the technology at the disposal of the Pima County Sheriff's Office and the FBI, whether it be cameras or whether it be various surveillance devices, whether it be ways to test DNA, how come someone in this day and age hasn't been caught doing this?
So we tend to be focused on it was interesting to watch a lot of the media that were deployed and some of their responses when they got to the area. Apparently they had never been in Arizona before. And I'm an East Coaster. And so we get out here and you realize how desolate an area can be. So we tend to be focused on a busy area with lots of cameras. When you come to Arizona, you've got a lot of wide open space, desert area, and not as many cameras. And we see now that the Ring doorbell cameras are so set back from the road that they can see people on their front porch, but they can't really see people out on the road. So what they were looking at is video footage from further away from the house, because you go down the road, you take a turn, you take another turn, and boom, you're at a main street with a shopping plaza and so forth. There's where you're going to have cameras. So, but you're not going to have as many cameras right in the area of the home.
So it sounds like, yeah, and I'm kind of building a timeline based off of your answers here. The working theory in our conversation seems to be possibly a break-in gone wrong, signs of a struggle, multiple people were involved. They took her from the house and sounds like drove straight into the desert where there were no cameras, there was no CCTV, so that makes them very difficult to track. In a scenario like that, what options is the Pima County Sheriff's Office or the FBI left with?
Someone finding that person who's willing to tell them what happened.
And that's it?
It comes down to if they can get some video footage in the area further out and identify a vehicle or someone that they can confirm knows something, is getting someone. If there was multiple people, you try to find the weakest link, and it's going to take someone to call in that knows what happened.
So walk me through, and I know I'm asking you to be in someone else's mind, but walk me through what the thought process of a criminal like this could be, if it is a break-in gone wrong, right? I mean, you try to break into this old woman's house, and she's there, so you kidnap her because no witnesses, and a huge search ensues, and what you do in return is you send all of these ransom letters out to various media outlets in Phoenix, and you also send one to us over here at TMZ. What's the thinking behind that? Why blow this up so much more than it needed to be?
Well, I don't know that we've determined that those two are connected. It could have been two separate tentacles. The people who the culprits here that took her are completely separate from those who were sending stuff in and trying to get some ransom. And usually in these kinds of cases, where if it is someone who went there to break in, were surprised by her, they panicked. And so once the panic sets in, one thing leads to another, and things just get worse and worse. So there's somebody out there that knows exactly what happened because they were part of it, and it's just a matter of them no longer wanting to walk around looking at who's following them.
And so my final question would be, if she was taken, and she's unfortunately no longer with us, there is this overwhelming theory in the media that Nancy Guthrie was taken south of the border. Do you subscribe to that theory? And if she was, do you think there's a chance that she will ever be found?
Do I subscribe to that theory? I wouldn't rule that theory out. I think that if she was, I think there might be indicators already, but they haven't put that out that there was any indication that they took her across the border, unless the border's pretty tight now, and trying to get a woman, I guess if they killed her first and she was in the trunk, I guess it's possible for them to get her out of the country. But I haven't subscribed to that theory yet.
I ask you because we did receive a demand letter from, and as you say, this could have been from anybody, so this is not confirmed, but we did receive a demand letter that says, I know what happened. That was definitely Nancy I saw with them south of the border, obviously, which intimates that people took her there.
Yeah, it's all about how credible the sources are. People say a lot of things, and especially again when there's $1 million on the table, and it's a matter of finding that one person that truly does know, that one credible source. I guarantee the FBI has been tapping into their informants, their sources all over the Southwest, and including those on the other side of the border. And if they knew anything, they would be providing it now. So,
Mr. Hooper, thank you so much for joining me. You've been absolutely fantastic.
thank you, Jackson.